Hello and welcome. Today I'm going to try and talk about a game or a book series that I read a bunch in the past. I've mentioned it once in the past, I think, but the book series... Oh, this game has changed. I don't know what any of this is. What is this? I have a dice bag. I have an accessory. I am lost. I don't know what has changed about this game. I guess a bunch of stuff has sort of changed. Like, what's with the health files on the left? I'm gonna be focusing on that for a second first because I'm lost in this game. It's been like a couple, like there was an update that was like not the update or something was what it was called. Because like there's apparently a big, relatively big update planned to be released relatively soon, but I don't know what this is. This has changed. I like this. It shows a lot more info here. More info. More info. More info. I still don't know what this is though. Well, maybe those are revives to track the number of times you can die within the room or on that floor or whatever. That may be what that is. That seemed kind of weird, but anyway, okay, so I don't think the game's changed too much, and I could probably check the changelog to figure that out, but for now, I'm going to just play the game. Basically, I can't imagine it's fundamentally changed much, so I'm just going to play it and talk about books. So, like, as what I was going to talk about was Ranger's Apprentice, which was a series that, like, it's not the most exceptional story. It has clear, like, oh, the cool people are actually the people who are dark and hooded and shrouded in mystery, like that type of thing. It doesn't focus on that too much because that's not really the type of story it is. Like, it's much more of a... Sorry, I don't know what health flask recovers +1 heart, so presumably there's something I can use to consume a health flask. Vitality has been nerfed. Okay. Weapon skill strength. 5th, deal double damage. Strength proficiency, sure. Okay, the game has changed more than I thought. Anyway, but it's a story that it's more or less the main character. So, main character, that's the wrong choice, I don't need an accessory. The main character is a, like, orphan who grew up in an orphanage. Fairly common setup to, like, establish a character who has a rough upbringing. Okay, what is dealing damage to me there? Like, something's instantly dealing damage. Is it the impact? Okay, yeah, it must have been the impact. I must have not been paying attention. Shouldn't have taken as much damage as I did. But, yeah, he's an orphan. He's brought up. He's weak, kind of flimsy. Not flimsy, but he's weak, scrawny, not physically strong. He wants to be a knight like everyone because his story... The story that has been told is that his father was a great hero or something like that, which it's eventually revealed the truth that he wasn't necessarily a great hero, but he did save a fairly important individual's life while he died himself. So it's not totally a lie, but he was just a soldier. And then he can't become the main character in the story, can't become a knight because he's weak and not physically suited for the job. That looks like a trap. That seems really good, but also, like, there's no way it's just that. That seems way too good. I don't actually need that if I use this weapon. This doesn't feel like a proper weapon. There has to be some, like, thing behind it that... What the... Okay, this game has changed a lot. So like I can use that to not do this maybe. But anyway, yeah, he can't become a knight, and that results in sort of no one's gonna take him because all the other job positions that are available are boss suppression. Okay, that's different. I have no money. Give me nothing. But he can't get a job because he's not a good cook. He's not good with like diplomacy. He has very little going for him that is known at this point in time. It's eventually revealed that he has a positive skill, and he gets a job offer from basically the spies of the kingdom. So they're less spies and more undercover, but not undercover because they're very obvious. Like, they are good at hiding and collecting information, but they dress very conspicuously most of the time. So they're not really... they're also not just spies, but like... it's the rangers of the story, hence the name Ranger's Apprentice. He becomes the apprentice after he sneaks into the office of the Baron of where they live. And like that sneaking in was a test from the ranger, be like he can sneak in himself, and then it was testing if he would, you know, try to lie to get out of it instead of being honest. Being like, you know, honesty's good, that's sort of the message here. And, you know, this might be good. Like, the message is honesty's good. Part of the reason that the ranger had his eye on him was because he snuck into the cook's area to steal pie, but when he was caught, he didn't lie about it. He just fessed up to having, you know, stolen and eaten the pie. Which, like, it's honor, so it's positive. But then this leads to him joining becoming an apprentice to the ranger of the thief. Yes, thief is the word they use. And as an apprentice of the ranger, this is something that wouldn't have happened in the past. They're different though. Like, they have different icons. I'm curious. Ah, the mimic. See, now that's fun. You can tell that it's something that isn't normal. That's actually very good. That was fun. Because I could tell something was off from the beginning. Intelligence, sure. But, yes, he becomes an apprentice ranger. His sort of childhood bully from the orphanage becomes a knight. His childhood sort of sweetheart becomes a diplomat. Another one of them becomes a cook. And the other one just becomes a bureaucrat, basically. Oh, that's probably worth it. And it's also another 1,000 damage. Yes, that's how that all works out. He, you know, studies. He becomes good at what he's doing eventually. Within the first book, he helps solve a problem with... I'm gonna die. He helps solve a problem with sort of magical beasts, which is kind of as far as the story gets in terms of magic. There's not a lot of magic in the world. It's fairly low fantasy, because it is magic. Like, the world has magic, 100%. But it's not... I don't know what health flasks are. It's not central to the story, the somewhat existence of magic. But there is magic. But yes, the story starts, he helps them, he earns his position as an apprentice. I think by the end of, like, the first book is, he helps with a monster problem. I can't remember how the next few books actually space out, but like between the second and third books, I think he helps with like a sort of international incident. I need boots and a helmet. To pick up that, inflict corruption to all enemies, ignores corruption cooldown. Each stack of corruption increases damage taken. Stamina. More damage, less per trait. Reveal secret room. So I'm gonna grab that as 11. This would be worth it, but I'd rather have all the traits. So I'd rather grab those two. Stuff is also a lot cheaper in this game now. So now I have everything, and that means 5,000 damage. Keep going to... literally just for a second, see all the books names. So the books. Actually, it also kind of, it ended, then it got unended. Okay. Yeah, like it ended. Okay, no, it ended, but then there was a sequel sort of spin-off series. Okay, but what I need to have on the top is there. Here. But I think the game might become a little harder, but I'll grab it and I will not grab it. But yeah, so the first book he helps out with a monster infestation. The second book, he's journeying through the neighboring country. I can't remember what the original reason is in the neighboring country. It might be just to learn while another mission is going on. This is probably worth it. Or this. Go with this. But he's journeying there. They find... They get proof that an invasion has been occurring, which leads to them discovering that an invasion is about to occur in their country. So they have to be careful. It seems like upgrading this is actually a waste, but... But an invasion is about to occur. As part of this, the main character sort of ends up sacrificing himself, sort of. They don't die, but like they get captured. Sacrificing himself to burn the bridge that has been being built across a chasm that would allow for basically a sneak attack. Oh, I gotta help because I got two in the thing, yeah. And so he prevents the sneak attack, but this he gets captured, and that's where the second book finishes. A bunch of stuff happens throughout it, but it's not... It's all specific, and reading it makes far more sense than having it be very roughly summarized. But then following... Grab this, I can't. But the next book centers around him and the other individual that was with him dealing with their capture. It's not known right away, but the other... It's another female character who was posing as the maid for the princess of their country. Which, spoilers, she is... I mean, if I'd read it now, I would have definitely guessed that she was actually the princess the whole time. But it's eventually revealed that she was the princess, and she... What's kind of positive about this story is she is, in a reasonable way, she was the reason that the main character doesn't die in this book. Again, it's done in a way that's, you know, normal. It's reasonable. And it's nice. And like, but they're captured by what are basically just, I don't know, an approximation of Vikings. Whether it's realistic or not, I assume it's not a realistic portrayal of Vikings. It could be somewhat realistic, but like they had long ships and they used axes and a lot of the common imagery for Vikings. And as part of that, they, you know, keep slaves, which I think might be accurate. It probably is, just realistically speaking, a lot of distant past people used and sort of kept slaves to some extent. Like, it wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out that real Vikings did keep slaves. That's what I'm saying. But yes, they're kept slaves. He suffers because he needs to do physical work which is a frozen cold area. One of the jobs involves water, so he loses a lot of energy, and he was the one who foiled the plan, so there was kind of a grudge out on him. He was in a rough spot. There's an entire thing about there's a drug that a slave who's actually working for the Viking people, like the slave is in on it and getting people hooked on the drug so that they can't escape, and it weakens them and they become much more manageable because they are constantly delirious, which is pretty, like, somewhat kind of dark for a kid's book. Like one of the slaves working with the slavers to trick other slaves into doing this drug that makes them easier to control is it's pretty dark. It doesn't feel dark when reading it because it's a kid's book, but the concept is pretty messed up. I don't really need the stats, do I? But this thing doesn't scale with anything but equipment. But then he gets taken out from the slave area by the girl who was posing as the maid but is actually the princess. You know what? 40% more damage. It's probably worth it. Oh, more heart. It's better. But she saves him. They spend time recuperating in a cabin over the winter. He eventually gets mostly better, but not 100% better because it's difficult to recuperate effectively in a cabin that doesn't have, actual support or, a doctor. But then this book, they don't get out of it. Scandia is the name. They don't get out until after the 4th book. And in the process of getting to this part of the story, the ranger who's teaching the main character, got themselves personally exiled in a, childish comedic way by commenting on the king being bald or something. Joking that he's hiding that he's bald to get kicked out of the country so that he has an excuse to not do his job. And then he uses that as a way to travel to try to save his apprentice. And, I mean, he's traveling. There's scenes that sort of have character growth for the former bully turned friend of the main character. And eventually, not after this, they do help get back eventually. But by the time they meet, he's already been saved. But that's sort of then leads to the 4th book, where it is revealed, I mean, I guess, yeah, it's where there is an invasion being prepared. There's an invasion that is being planned that will have the Scandians. I assume it's just thinking about it now that I actually know of the term Scandinavia. As a kid, I didn't know about Scandinavia, or at the time I read these, I didn't know about Scandinavia as a term. That's probably pretty good, but it's useless with what I have. Yeah, so Scandia, which is just Scandinavia, I guess. But there's a battle that will occur because a neighboring country is going to invade. So I can't remember the exact way that they, are revealed to still be there and alive, but they end up helping the Scandians with their fight because they didn't totally betray them. Like, the one that they helped them escape. So the reason that they are helping is because he was a good dude, pretty much. And so that's the fourth book. There's a big fight. Everything goes well. They train slaves how to shoot in a controlled manner. Which, like, with, I think, a deal about if they help, they'll be set free? Though maybe not even that, I can't remember. But yes, they fight, they help, then they're safe. And they all go home, have a nice time. And bosses have a weakness to a damage type. Interesting. Yes. Oh, I just remembered that I have a thing to reroll rooms, so if I have a bad room, I can just reroll the next one. But yes, that's how the fourth book ends. They're all back home. Happy, happy. I think this part ends with a clear affirmation that the main character is happy being a ranger instead of some other more illustrious position where everyone would respect him. So it's like, oh, he's grown to like what he's been learning and the people he's worked with, so that's kind of wholesome. It's a happy-ish moment for most people. But then, yes, that's how that volume ends. The next volume skips forward in time to when the main character is a little bit older, and they're no longer an apprentice, sort of. And like, as they are no longer an apprentice, they then have to have their own hold to manage or to help out around, like work at. So they get positioned at a new hold away from where they were in the past. And they're given a major problem that they have to work to solve. Because, what is it? Yes, it's like the current ruler of the hold slash fief is sick. There's a bunch of suspicions that need to be cleared up. Eventually it's revealed that it was all the good guy. He even as a kid, it was obvious that he was going to be the villain. But even the character who was initially introduced as a good guy, even they, once it is revealed who they are, there's a big fight that arises, but they have to break their way into a like reasonably well defended. They need to siege a fort with significantly fewer people, and there's like they're doing it with people who are unique personalities in multiple ways. Some of them just have physical deformities, and they're getting the help of a doctor who is helping the people who have physical deformities. But most of it, the help comes from just friends, but they fix it. He gets recognition within the correct context. I have no idea, like, if I push Q? Bombs. Oops, not what I meant. E? No. Okay, I need to figure out what this flask thing is. Space. It's... Use health flask V. What does it do? It restores half a heart? What is the point of that? That doesn't seem very good. Especially when you get, like, poisoned because you weren't paying attention. But, yeah, that's that. Yeah, so that's where he ends. It gets him notoriety within his overall group. Like, the Rangers recognize him. There's in the next one of the next. Oh wait, no, that takes 2 books. It's initially uncertain, and in the second book, that's when they fight and break their way into the beef. And that's how they successfully get in. That's 2 books for that plotline. He gets recognition. Then the next book, book 7, goes back in time for some reason. Which when I was trying to reread it a couple years ago, this is kind of where I lost it because... where I stopped rereading it because it was kind of less interesting. That's really bad. It's less interesting to reread books where it's sort of, this is back in time for some reason. Like, there's not much of a reason for it to be out of order. Presumably, the author just thought of the idea of this book after they wrote the 2 books before. Like, it was probably just they didn't plan ahead, which is fine. But that's probably what happened, it's my assumption. And then, yes, the next one takes place in the past, where they need to help one of the Scandians who is raiding a coastal city, you know, as real or fictional Vikings are wont to do. I don't know if that happened, it probably did. But it's one of those things where you never really know if it's one of the common things that's made up, or if it's actually something that happened. My assumption is it probably did happen, because, I mean, it's very easy to fake, but it's also, people, you know, pirates, all that did exist, so it makes sense if there's people who did that. I'm too focused because I keep getting hit anyway. There. Okay. Yes. They then help out him who is raiding a coastal city because there was a whole trap because he was betrayed by one of his own people because he's now the king of Candia, but you know, some people don't like that because he's a better person than the previous king. Like, he's against raiding the country that they have a treaty with, which is pretty reasonable. Because, I mean, you generally don't want to break a treaty with a country when it's like, you have plenty of other people that you can raid. Especially when you're personal friends with people from that country. Wait, this is healing for 1, so it just fills your heart. So if your heart is at half, it only heals half. If you use it at a full empty heart, it heals a full heart. That's kind of bad. Though it's not that meaningful, because half a heart is not always different from a full heart, but yes. But yeah, they travel through, it's basically meant as, I think, like, I mean, it's a desert country. I think, if I remember correctly, it feels like it's themed after, like, maybe not the Middle East, but it's themed after just desert countries, maybe Egypt type? Not Egypt, but very deserty, hot. I can't remember specifically what it is clearly themed after. It's definitely fairly obvious when read, but that's one that I haven't read in, I feel, 7 or 8 years. But it's fun enough. But, and then, what am I trying to figure out? So then that, you know, they travel through, there's moments of danger. All these rangers also have horses. The main character almost loses his horse. And he doesn't because he races better and wins and stuff. And the horses are also incredibly intelligent, so that's why he won the horse race, because his horse was just smarter. Oh, you get dexterity from... Yeah, dexterity gives you more stamina, doesn't it? I shouldn't have been hit there, I'm just bad. So, but yeah, that plotline is when he's still a kid and he's still an apprentice. He helps out. He helps out because it's the king of an allied country and a personal friend. Like, despite the fact that, you know, objective, they were raiding a place, so it's kind of... They are still kind of the bad guys. And, like, the actual... They don't break him out, I think. They actually just go through, like, a full-on... like... trade. Not a prisoner exchange, but... They go with the intent of it being a proper... like, hostage situation, but then it isn't in the end, because... it just wasn't. It changed eventually, but... They save him. He's fine. They go back home. Everyone's happy. I'm gonna check this just to look at how these have changed. Health. I kind of don't understand why it needs to be numerical, because there's either intervals of 10 or intervals of 20, so it is whatever. Mana. Damage bonus per mana. Stamina. Strength. This 14 strength growth, strength proficiency. Increased damage per strength is 7%. Hearts from strength. So yeah, you get more hearts the more strength you get. You get more stamina the more dex you have. And attack speed gives half of the dex level as like percent attack speed, and half as much for reload. Crit chance for int is like a quarter. Yeah, 0.25%. I could just look right there. This is not... I don't think... Oh, it is the right, because like 20... No, it's not right. Okay, no, it's plus 0.5% per level. Flask charges, flask consumption time, flask health recovery, it should be 20. Offense, total damage. There's a bunch of different damage types listed. Holy and Dark, I don't think I've seen. I probably have. Oh, definitely. Critical hits, critical hit multiplier, critical hit chance, backstab, critical hit chance bonus. Oh, if you attack from behind, you get a critical hit chance bonus. And then there's a crushing blow proc. Interesting. There's a lot more detail in here than there was before. Bonus pickup radius. I like it. I like all the info. Yes. That book 7 is called Eric's Ransom. The next one is The Kings of Clonmel. And then, well, 8 and 9 are comboed. Book 8 sets up book 9. It's all one story. Book 8's Kings of Clonmel. I can't remember if this one here, although you'll be able to progress beyond this room and fight in 0.20. So the next update will let this keep going. Same one? Yes. This will be later. But yes, Kings of Clonmel and Halt's Peril. Halt is the main character's ranger teacher. And that's sort of who he is. I can't remember if it's in the first one or whether it's in book 8 or book 9 where it's it's explained that he is the brother of a king of Clonmel, and Clonmel is like a very, I think it's Gaelic themed country, I believe. And like, it's very unstable. So his brother either dies or is in a state approaching death. And that's just sort of, that then sets up for the next one where he's in danger, and as like a passing of the torch type of tone, the main character needs to save his life, whereas in the past the protection went the other way. So 8 and 9 mostly are about that, like his relationship with his mentor and how it has changed as he grew older. Then there's book 10, The Emperor of Nihonja, which is stuff happens in a somewhat distant island nation that's very clearly themed after Japan, with like samurai and everything. The emperor is being hunted, and like he's friends with the main character's knight friend, because the knight friend was sent over as a diplomat, because the knight friend, I can't remember if they're already married, but they're married to the princess of the country. So there's a diplomatic reason for him to be over there. They're friends for some reason, that then they then send over some people to help protect the emperor as he's being hunted. There's a feat of inhuman catching an arrow with his bow to save the emperor's life. They fight, everything goes well, everyone's happy. Everything's always happy in these stories. It never ends poorly. And that's there. Then there's a book that's basically a bunch of short stories, like some of which are nice. Like there's one that explicitly, one of the readers apparently asked the author about what happens to horses, because horses only live or they can only really work in the way you would ride them around for like 10 years or something. So a reader asked the author what happened to them, so there's an entire sweet little short story about how they have stock of horses to keep as much parity for each horse. So like each horse has a lineage that is sort of maintained, and once they reach a certain age and they start to lose physical capability, they're then swapped out and they get to spend the rest of their life chilling on the farm, and not in a euphemistic way. And they're happy. It's a fun collection of short stories after having read the first 10 books. And then there's book 12, which is a big time skip to the future, where the main character married their childhood sweetheart between like book 10 and like they marry maybe in book 11, like in the short stories, but then book 12 she's dead. She tried to save people in a fire and she burned to death. Kind of lame, but it's actually kind of maybe even worse because it's just being used as sort of motivation for the main character, which is not really the best. She at least died trying to save someone, so it's a little better maybe, but it's not the best way to kill a character that otherwise was competent. But yeah, that's how that ended. Well, no, that's what introduces the book called The Royal Ranger, which fundamentally the plot, it's basically a restarting of the series, but now the former apprentice is now the teacher of someone else. This person they're teaching is the daughter of his friend and his wife, who is also his friend, but like that I think are now king and queen. Their daughter is the princess. She's messing around too much with the guards, being all sneaky and whatever for some reason. So she then becomes an apprentice ranger, and that's what she has to do then. Yes, so the Royal Ranger then became a spin-off series, like sequel spin-off sort of story, that New Beginning, the final novel, and it became the first book in the sequel series that is only 2 books long, I think. Maybe? The Royal Ranger. How long of a spin-off series was it? Or a sequel series, really? It mostly ends with, that book specifically mostly ends with the princess being like, no, let me stay as a ranger despite the fact that I might die and there will be no more heir for the king and queen. Which, like, I mean, the king and queen probably shouldn't let that happen. But it's a kid's story, so it doesn't really matter. Like, the logic doesn't actually need to make sense, especially since it's following, like, a wholly fictitious world set in basically a Middle Ages style story. But yeah, that last book was okay. I was just looking at the series. So yeah, the sequel series currently has 5 books. I've literally only read the first one because I think the first book of this series is technically still the last book of the main series. But they also have a new name for it within the realm of the new series, which is weird to me. But there's 5 books. I'm looking on Goodreads because that's just the easiest place to find it. And for some reason, the 6th book which has not been released yet, has 381 ratings, and it's at 3.86 stars for some reason. Like, it hasn't released yet. It's still months away from releasing. Maybe people got early read? Maybe there are early reading releases? Maybe. I mean, most of the reviews are in not English. So maybe there was a release somewhere else? Or maybe it's just not. Book is good, plot. Polish. Maybe it released early in Poland? That seems unlikely. I've now been distracted. But it doesn't seem like it's released. Do people get early review copies for some reason? Yeah, it hasn't been released until September. Also, it's a $26 book. That's expensive for like a relatively short book. Oh, that's the hardcover though. Hardcovers are more expensive. Yeah, okay. The Kindle edition would be $12, which is, I think, a reasonable range, and it would presume that like $20 or something a little lower than that would be soft cover. That's fine. But it looks like it brings back magical mumbo jumbo, which is not a relevant part of the story. But yeah, it's a fun series, the main series at least. I don't think it has the best ending. It sort of, if it ended there, it would be fine. Maybe the stuff after is still good. I haven't read it. But it coming full circle to he was an apprentice, he had his teacher, then it goes to he's the teacher with an apprentice. That's kind of a sweet ending. Like coming back to where it began. It then continues on instead of stopping there. But I do think killing off the like other character was kind of lame and unnecessary. But that's just a personal opinion. It was like she died saving a kid, so it's not as bad, but killing her off between books and just summarizing it in like a couple pages is kind of lame. She wasn't really that important of a character. She showed up in like 2 or 3 books and that was it. Actually, no, she showed up in 4 or 5 out of like 12, so that's actually not bad, considering she's not a main character. Converts souls into soul hearts. Neat. Start with dice. Mana. Ooh. That's fun. Just random gift. I'll stick with that for now. Yes, now that's done. I'm going to be stopping for today, and I'll be a wizard next time I play this game, because I'm probably only... Until I'm capable enough of actually beating Megadeth, I'm just going to play the Doppelganger over and over. Because the Doppelganger is the coolest one. He's a wizard, but better. He just gets a better ability. Though I would love a deprived Doppelganger, because he gets like... Instead of +1 to all proficiency, he gets +2 to all proficiency, which seems really good. Yes, that's where I'm stopping for today. It was fun to play this game again. The update changed it a little. Still, the base game when you're not trying to beat Megadeth is pretty easy. Of course, there's the cinders and the more challenging stuff that I probably should mess with, but the base game, the very minimal game, is a lot easier than a lot of base games. But it does have the challenge stuff, that's reasonable. But yeah. Stopping there for today. I started a little late because dinner was a little late for me. Yes.